अस्सलामु अलैकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली अला रसूलिहिल करीम, अम्मा बाद, फ़अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम, बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। I welcome you to program Understanding Quran, the Word of Allah, and this is Dr. Kanwal Kaisser. Today we'll be starting with Juz 20, and this is Surah An-Naml. This is a surah in which we read about the fascinating stories from the Prophet's life, Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam. Now towards the end, if you look at the very last verse, it gives us a very profound message. That is in Juz 19, Surah Naml, verse number 59. قُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ وَسَلَامٌ عَلَىٰ عِبَادِهِ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَىٰ Allahu khairum ma yushrikun. Say, praise be to Allah and peace be on His servants, whom He has chosen to deliver His message. Ask them, who is better, Allah or the deities they associate with Him? So it's a strong message, as I said, and the opening of this Juz 20 is giving us this time to ponder and think and work on our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Juz 20 starts with Amman khalaqas samawati wal ard wa anzala lakum minas samai ma'a fa ambatna fihi hadaika zata bahja ma kana lakum an tumbitu shajaraha a ilahum ma Allah bal hum qawmun ya'dilun. Is not He, that is Allah, who has created the heavens and the earth, sends down rain from the sky, and with it brings forth the beautiful gardens, and it is not in your ability to cause the growth of trees. Is there any other God besides Allah? No doubt, they are people who have done justice in ascribing equals to Him. So over here we find out that it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to think, to ponder over the nature, and when we look at the nature, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything in such harmony, with such perfection, which is not possible for any human being or creation to take care of. And the jolt is, ilahun ma Allah, is there any other ilah other than Allah? Then how come you are in transgression? The verses move on with further signs like, just think who has made earth a place for your residence and caused in it the rivers to flow, set mountains upon it and placed a barrier between the two seas. Is there any other God beside Allah? Again, ilahun ma Allah, and then bal aktharuhum la ya'lamun. Indeed, most of them, they don't even have the knowledge. So the verses move down again, asking us, who answers the oppressed person who cries out to Him and reveals his affliction and makes one inheritor of the earth? Is there any other God than Allah? Ilahun ma Allah. And similarly, we keep talking about this, keep jolting, keep wondering that what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expecting from us over here. And then say, Ta'ala Allahu amma yushrikun. Allah is much profound, much greater than what they are doing, how they are ascribing partners to Him. So when we're talking about this, one thing that we need to understand is that Allah's being ilah. And that is a concept that I would like to elaborate on, because towards the end of this passage, on the verse number 66, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bal hum fi shakkim minha, bal hum minha amun, that rather they are in doubt about it, nay, they are blind concerning it. Why are people blind? Because they do not understand some basic principles which have been repeatedly coming in Quran. Now let us try to understand, when we even recite La ilaha illallah, we are negating, we are saying there is no ilah but Allah. So that means Allah is a specific name of a being who is a creator, and He has all the attributes which are at the level of perfection. He is matchless. Nobody can even come any closer to Him. Then the terminology ilah, ilah is when we say any other God, anyone who is worthy of worship. Let us try to understand this concept, because when we talk about Tawheed, this is one important aspect of Tawheed, saying Tawheed-e-uluhiyat, in which we understand Allah's status as ilah. And especially in Surah Naml, as soon as we start verse number 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is repeatedly asking us about this thing. So, and we have to understand that Allah is the only being to whom then people have to devote their words, their actions, and their inward and their outward. That is like as we read the concept, inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen, that all my lifestyle has to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I get up in the morning, when I'm in my office, when I'm at my home, when I'm doing my grocery, when I'm studying, when I'm having my social interaction, any challenge in life, any happy moment in life, all the time I have to be thinking how I connect to the Creator. So, none is to be worshipped than Him, and He is the one who has to be glorified and exalted. And when we worship Him, that means it has to be with lot of love and lot of humility. And this is the concept that we have to carry on with ourselves whenever we say He is our Ilah. The verses move on, and verse number 77 tells us, وَإِنَّهُ lahudam wa rahmatul lil mu'minin, and it is certainly a guide and blessing to the true believers. So sometimes when you're studying Quran and you feel that you're not getting enough guidance from it, you know what you have to work on? Your iman. And what is iman? Your belief system. You have to start believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the belief has to be according to the principles which are given in Quran. You have to start believing in the prophets, you have to start believing in the day of judgment, the resurrection, all the events unseen. The stronger you get in your belief, the more you will feel this hadaya, this guidance, the clarity in lot of concepts. And then in verse number 82, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this dabbatim min al earth. There is going to be, when the time to fulfill our word will come, we will bring out from the earth a monster that shall speak to them, because the people did not believe in our revelation. This is like a very desperate and utmost move that will come into play, because repeatedly in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing us back to this message: come back to oneness of Allah, come back to obedience of Allah, come back to worship of Allah. And while we say worship of Allah, the world, everything that we do 24/7 are our tools to get connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not, He's not asking us to give away our life, give away whatever activities and passions we have, just tame them down in that boundary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us. So a time would come when people would not be interested, or people will just, this will be like an exhaustive activity by the scholars and by the people in trying to give this message to all the non-believers. And that is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring out an animal, a monster, a dabatul earth, which will come out, and this animal is going to speak for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is like a height of something, when it's like the time is near, the last, these are one of the last signs before the day of judgment, before the Qiyamah. And then in the last passage of Surah Naml, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the time when the trumpet shall be blown. If you look at these verses, وَيَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي السُّورِ, on the day when the trumpet shall be blown, and all who dwell in heavens and the earth shall be terrified, except those whom Allah will choose to spare, and all shall come to Him in utter humiliation. And that's the time when now the accountability will be starting. Let us also try to understand the blowing of this trumpet, which we say sur, and this is going to be blown by the angel Israfil. Now the one who will blow the trumpet has been ready to do so since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created him. It's just like, you know, when there's a race and there is a person who has to blow up a whistle, and he's just there with the whistle and just waiting for that time, the click, to just blow the whistle. So imagine that Israfil alayhi salam is waiting to just blow that sur anytime. And we find out from again the ahadith that people will be busy doing their daily chores. The people in the business community, they will be in the marketplaces buying and selling. Students will be studying, ladies will be engaged in their home matters, and suddenly the horn will be blown. Nobody will be given ample time to settle down all the accounts and become more spiritual or religious. No warning time will be given. Then we find out that there are going to be three horns which will be blown. Basically two horns, but one has a subcategory to it. The first time the horn will be blown is when people will go in sudden shock. And then the second horn will be blown when all the creation will die. And then the second horn will be blown, and that's the time when the resurrection will come and everyone will be back to life. So with the first horn we find out that people will be dead as long as Allah wills, and according to a hadith it is, the figure given is 40, but we don't know whether it is 40 days, 40 months, 40 years. So what's the scale of that? Just says after 40. And then their bodies will decay, all the bodies will decay except this last tip of the spine, which is coccyx bone. And then Allah will send down the cloud to release the rain, and when the rain will fall on the people, their bodies will start growing from this coccyx like a plant. And after that the trumpet will be blown, and then the signs of this will be the signal for resurrection. The souls will return to their bodies and they will be coming out of their graves, and that's the time of lot of haste. Now basically whenever we read account of the blowing of the trumpet and the day of resurrection, it's like when you feel that you are so vulnerable and the might only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you feel so helpless. So in this dunya, when we are taking care of whatever we want to, our different activities, that's when we feel like I'm in control of everything. But reading such accounts tell us, no, straighten up, be on Sirat al-Mustaqim, work on yourself, groom yourself, not only for dunya but also for akhirah. And then another important concept which has been given out over here in verse number 89 and 90 is Man jaa bil hasana falahu khairum minha wa hum min faza'in yawma izin aminun. Those who have done good deeds shall be rewarded with what is better and shall be secure from the terror of that day. Wa man jaa bis sayyiha, and those who have done evil deeds shall be flung upon their faces in the hellfire. Should you not be rewarded according to your deeds? So the result is going to be crystal clear. If you bring in good deeds, you're going to be having a happy ending. If you bring in bad deeds, that's when you are automatically going towards the hellfire. That's the path you chose for yourself. Let's talk a little bit about doing good deeds in the month of Ramadan as well. We are looking for these opportunities, and now just few days left, just last 10 days left. Then what are the different good deeds that we can invest in? Because we also find out from a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ in the last 10 days will speed up and will also motivate his family members and friends around when everyone is feeling like tired, and sometimes people are opting for doing their Eid shopping and Eid plans. So this is the time, this is a very crucial time when we start investing in our deeds. One of the hadiths tells us, the gist of which is, if you think of doing one good deed, then the angels immediately write down, according to the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one deed for you. And you haven't done it yet, you have just thought about it. The moment you do that deed, then according to your intention and the kind of activity you did, your reward is going to be multiplied. Now think of another scenario. A person thinks of a bad deed, sometimes like you are so angry with someone and this person is coming your way to ask you for a favor. So you think in your heart, I'm not going to run this person favor, I'm going to flatly refuse. So the angels are told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pause and wait and give chance to this person. Maybe this person will think of going back on and doing the better deed. And usually this happens when this person comes to you asking for some favor, and even when you were thinking, I'm not going to help this person, you say, okay, what the hell, let me help this person. This is, I can put in my right share. So then what happens is that if that person doesn't do that bad deed, one reward is written for that person. Isn't it beautiful that you are getting all these bonuses? So another thing we find out about good deeds is, if you recite kalama, tahleel, then its weight is most heaviest in the scale. A very beautiful narration, we find out a man will be brought on the day of judgment, and he will be forwarded with 99 scrolls of bad deeds, and he will be like obviously in mess, thinking, what am I going to do? 99 scrolls of bad deeds in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're going to be put in that scale, weight scale. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go over this scroll and say, what did you do? Did you do that? Did you do that? And the person is going to be totally ashamed and say, I don't have any excuse. And then a small paper slip will be brought over there with one kalama written, maybe that person recited a couple of times. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, okay, let's weigh the scrolls as well as this slip of paper. And the person is going to say, what will this slip of paper do as compared to this 99 scrolls of bad deeds in front of me? But when they will be put on that scale, then the balance will immediately go down on that slip of paper. So nothing could be compared to the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So subhanallah, these are the days when we can recite kalama and we can make lot of du'as. And then another, one of the tasbihat, when we say two words which are lighter on the tongue and heavier on the scale, which is subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. And then another hadith says, there's nothing that weighs more heavy in the balance than a good akhlaq. You know, these days, especially as we are fasting, and with this fasting, sometimes you are wondering what you should be doing, and you don't feel like talking to someone, even smiling, but consider it's sadaqah. And when you give out sadaqah, the best akhlaq, that's when your deeds are getting accomplished and getting registered over there. So with this we move on to Surah Al-Qasas. This is a surah which is going to be heavily talking about Musa alayhi salam. Very interestingly, we find out that the accounts of Musa alayhi salam story is there almost in all surahs. One way or the other, his name keeps coming up and different dimensions of his story are there. But Surah Al-Qasas is a story in which very strongly and very profoundly his story has been given out, and how we need to have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, full reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how we need to appreciate the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for any human being and for the generations and for the people. So Surah Al-Qasas begins with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tasin Mim. Tilka ayatul kitabil mubin. Natlu alayka min naba'i Musa wa Fir'aun bil haqq liqaumin yu'minun. These are the verses of the glorious book that makes the things clear, and in all truth we narrate you some information about Musa and Pharaoh for the instruction of the believer. So different accounts have been given, like the story begins with how the Pharaoh, he was so insecure and he believed in divide and rule formula, and for that what he did was he was killing the sons of Bani Israel. And then we find out how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Musa alayhi salam and also brought him back to his mother, because he refused to take feed of any of the women inside the palace. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought him back to his own mother, who fed him. That also tells us about the importance of mother feed for the babies. Then we find out how Asiya alayhi salam, who was the wife of the Pharaoh, I mean, she was living in a system where everything was totally against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but she produced such, again, profound results. And these are a lot of learnings in this surah for us, in the story of Musa alayhi salam. And then the story moves on and we find out that he was with the protection in the palace of Pharaoh, and then also with his mother for the feeding period. And then he reached his maturity when he was fully grown, and that was the time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about him saying, Ataynahu hukman wa ilma. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him wisdom and knowledge. Repeatedly we see in Quran, whenever there is a talk of different prophets and different stories, we find out two important elements have been touched upon: ilm and hikmah, the knowledge and the wisdom. And that means when you acquire knowledge, that's when you get wisdom, and that's the application of that knowledge. And when you have wisdom, that's when you also invest in the right kind of knowledge. So the story moves on and we find out that Musa alayhi salam accidentally killed someone. And again we see that this is an important thing to understand over here. Why? Because there was a time when he was a baby and he needed to escape being killed. And now again, as he is a grown-up man, he has to escape to be killed by the Pharaoh and his soldiers. So there are sometimes things that happen around in our life, and things keep coming back repeatedly in our life one way or the other, and we keep wondering. So there is always, everything happens with the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's either trying to teach us something or guiding us towards something which we need to either improve or work upon. And then we find out when he landed into that trouble with the man, he made a very beautiful dua. We are going to talk about this dua, but over here we'll take a short break. On the purity of the society, the dress, the conversation we have, the actions we have, so that our society is a society where believer can have comfort zone for himself and are also able to reflect and ponder over the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the surah begins, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Suratun anzalnaha wa faradnaha wa anzalna fiha ayatim bayyinat la'allakum tazakkarun. Now the opening of this surah is also so amazing. It is like out of the box kind of thought process that has been given over here. Like you wait and you read these verses, like the verses are Suratan Anzalnaha. This is a surah which we have revealed. But all the verses have been revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what an amazing style has been picked up over here, because many a time the commandments which come in this surah, people sit and they are discussing in a social gathering and they say, I don't think so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to do this thing. I don't think so, we are supposed to do it. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, it's not about Arab practice, it's not about a cultural norm, it's about a verse that have been revealed by me. And then what? وَفَرَدْنَاهَا. This has obligatory components in it. Well, excuse me, we have done 17 paras till now, the glimpses of 17 paras, and we have talked about so many verses where it is said this is first, this is obligatory, this is something compulsory that you have to abide by. But again, the style in this surah is so amazing. Faradnaha, remember, this has been revealed by me. All the things that we'll be talking about in this surah are coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and many of those components are compulsory. And then what? And its revelation contains clear verses. The next important message is ayatim bayyinat. It is clear. Why are you hooked up on different ideologies? Why are you moving from one scholar to another scholar, one school of thought to another school of thought, trying to escape from the commandments which are given in these verses? Don't do that to yourself. If they are clear verses, all you have to do is open Quran and have some authentic tafsir with you, the explanation of it, and go over these verses. Then look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and his wives and see how they applied it in their society over there. And then what? So that you may take heed. The reason for that is tazakkarun, so that we repeatedly ponder over these messages and we try to understand these messages. Immediately after that, we find out, as for the fornicator and the fornicatress, they flog each male and female, and if there is with 100 lashes, if they are guilty of the rape. Now, so what is there? The punishment has been given over here. Why? Because this thing, the adultery, is killing the society. I mean, if you look at our times, we feel the families, they are breaking up, and because of that, the dysfunctional families, the children, they are getting totally lost, and the impacts which are going on the society are beyond imagination. Talk to the experts in their field, in all fields, and you'll see drugs, and you'll see the level of this mental illnesses on the rise. You will see all the breakups which are impacting the children, their education, their career choices, their mindset. I mean, like, you can open up a whole Pandora box because of the issues which erupt from this adultery in the society. And then the fornicator has been told about that even if someone makes a claim about someone, just allegation has been put up, even that person is accountable for 80 lashes. So what have been told is, don't make casual remarks about anyone in the society. Be very careful, be very mindful in your lifestyle. So we'll move on with the rest of the commandments, but inshallah after a short break. Welcome back. We were talking about Musa alayhi salam and when he accidentally killed someone and he had to flee from that place. And while he was doing that, he was making this dua. قال ربي إني ظلمت نفسي فاغفر لي فغفر له إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. And he prayed, "O my Rabb, I have indeed wronged my soul. Please forgive me." So Allah forgave him. Surely He is the forgiving and the most merciful. Now this is very, very important element to understand, that it is not easy for usually what we see around in our society to acknowledge our own sins. Whenever people make mistake, they usually come up defensive. Now what we have to see is, whenever we sin or we make a mistake, we need to understand a personal responsibility. Basically what our brain does, it flatters and shields our ego against this blame. And because of that, what we do is we go into this defensive mode. So we need to understand that if we keep giving justifications for our sins, our blunders, our mistakes, what is happening is we are basically distorting the reality. And once you distort a reality, you are building up your own alternative universe for yourself. Because of that, you are going to have decreased ability to make the right choices, and it is going to be like a dominoes effect, in which we'll be getting totally off the track. So that is why it is important. If you make any mistake, you need to acknowledge yourself that yes, I had been wrong over there, and then say istighfar and move on. And that is like an important element that has been talked about over here. And another very beautiful dua that I would like to tell you, and these are the days when we should be reciting all these dua. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi zulman kathiran wa la yaghfiru dhunuba illa anta faghfir li maghfiratum min indik warhamni innaka antal ghafurur rahim. And so many other duas of the istighfar that we can make, and these are the duas which are going to help us sort of build ourselves. Now so ultimately Musa alayhi salam, he left that place and moved towards Madian, and from verse number 22 onwards we find out, as he made his way towards Madian, he said, "Soon my Rabb shall guide me to the right way." Very beautifully he said, "Asa Rabbi an yahdiyani sawa as-sabil." I mean, as if he didn't have any GPRS system so that he could Google down and find his location. And the best location that can be given to you is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sometimes even with your Google map, if you feel you're lost, this is the best dua to make at that moment. Now he was sitting over there and he was around this well, and he saw these two chaste women, and they were trying to take care of they wanted to get water for their animals, their flock. And Musa alayhi salam, he was sitting by the side, and when he saw them, he helped them. And after helping them, he came and sat on the side, and he made this another beautiful dua, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. This is the verse number 24. And what he did was, he did a good action, helped those needy women, and then he is making dua. He's not asking them to facilitate them in any way. And he's saying, "Oh Rabb, whatever good you bestow on me, I'm in desperate need of that." This is one beautiful dua when sometimes you're stuck in any situation you can make, because sometimes there are situations in our life we need help, but our mind is so much clouded that we are not able to think what is the best dua that I should be making at this moment. So the best dua is over here when we say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just you decide for me, I just desperately need everything. Now what we find out that after this, making this dua, he got the home, he got the wife, and he got business, he got all the work. So many a times scholars say, when you are not able to find a right match, spouse for yourself, or you're stuck in your business or your studies, this is a dua that you make. So he stayed over there with them, with his wife, because one of those girls, she was married to him, and he lived there for around 8 to 10 years. And once he was very well established, then by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had to go back to Pharaoh. And while he was on his way back to Pharaoh, on their way, when he was taking along his family, he saw some fire. And he told his family to pause over there. He told them, "Stay here. I saw a fire. I hope to bring some information from there, or a lightened torch with which you may warm yourself." So he went over there, and that was the time when he had his first interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now again, amazingly, we find out that he didn't tell his wife, I'm tired, I have to rest, why don't you go and grab some fire and come back and bring it to me, like sometimes the men in our society do. They are over the weekend, they are chilling, they are relaxing, and they want their wife, they expect their wife to take care of everything, the kids, the home, the bills, and even the chores outside. So this is an important aspect of the life of Musa alayhi salam that we find out. He wasn't selfish, he actually took care of his family. Then as we move on, we find out in verse number 51 to 55, another important message has been given to us. وَلَقَدْ وَصَّلْنَا لَهُمُ الْقَوْلَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَذَكَّرُونَ. We have conveyed our word to those over and over again in order that they may take heed, those to whom the scriptures were given before this, and they believe in it. When it is recited to them, they say, we believe in it. Surely this is the truth from our Rabb. Indeed, we were Muslims even before this time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that their ajr, their reward is going to be multiplied because of the sabr they did, and because how they repelled their sayyi'at with hasanat, their bad deeds with their good deeds. So over here what we find out is that while we believe in the message of Quran, we have been told to also believe in the message which the Prophet brings in. And this brings me to another important topic. When a lot of people in our community say, I believe in Quran, but I am not ready to believe in the hadith. It's not that I don't believe in the Prophet, but it's been 1400 years, and how do I know that the ahadiths which are with me, the sayings which are with me, are authentic? And many a times when they're sitting in the gatherings of the scholars, and if they hear the terminologies, this is a Hasan hadith, this is a authentic hadith, this is a not authentic hadith, this is a Zaif hadith, so they feel they are confused about this concept. Let me clarify over here that following the Prophet's Sunnah is the second important source of Islamic Sharia, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided Prophet to in all his practices. So Allah has enjoined upon the believers that they have to completely submit to the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his ahadith, and if someone rejects it, then that means he is out of that faith. So this is like important thing for us to understand. Now, when it comes to ahadith, we because do not understand all the sciences which are related in the study of ahadith, that is why we make these superficial statements. What you need to do is, if you have any doubts, go into the subject ilmul hadith, the knowledge of hadith. It's like a full department, like we have department of physics and department of chemistry, and we have department of anthropology and sociology and psychology, and there are multiple books and multiple materials that are read and that are dug and that are experienced, and that's when we come to a certain conclusion in that department. So if you study this knowledge of hadith properly with the scholars who are expert in this field, that's when you will be able to understand it. And you know, even it is so amazing that the lives of all those people who have actually worked on the hadith and the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it has also been extensively studied and registered, which is known as ilm al-rijal. That is the knowledge of these people. Like Hassan Basri said in a hadith, in his saying, if you hear a man denying a hadith, then his commitment to Islam, you have to suspect his commitment to Islam, for he is undoubtedly following his whims and desires and innovation. So we have to be very, very careful over here. And then we find out that in verse number 60, again another important concept has been given. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَمَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَزِينَتُهَا وَمَا عِندَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَىٰ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. The things which you have been given are but the provisions and adornments of this worldly life, and that which is with Allah is better and more lasting. Why don't you use your common sense? So common sense, which is always uncommon, it should tell us, this is where we need to pause and think. This life is called mata. What is mata? It's like a disposable stuff that we use. We use a tissue paper, we use a paper plate, we use a paper cup, and then we trash it. We don't save it. We don't save it like we have our regular solid stuff with us. So we use those things and then we get rid of it. So this life is mata, like how much are you going to have for yourself? Even if you have closet full of clothes, you're only going to wear one cloth per day. Even if you have 6 bedrooms, or even if a whole mansion, you're only going to sleep in one bed at a time. Even if you have a big table laid out in front of you, you're only going to eat couple of things, couple of items, one plate, and after that you're going to be overloaded in stuff. And these are the things that we have to understand, because once we understand that, that's when we realize how much we need to invest in this life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the night and day, and we also need to understand that we have an internal cycle of 24-hour internal cycle, a clock inside us, which is like in the background of our brain, and which keeps telling us it's a time to sleep, it's time to wake up, it's time to be alert, and we need to follow that cycle. Unless we follow that cycle, then that's when we are messed up. Like nowadays, people are sleeping the whole day and they are up the whole night. I'm not just talking about Ramadan, I'm talking about the rest of the month as well. So we have we have flipped that whole cycle. Verse number 76 to 82 talks about the story of Qarun, who was one of the Bani Israel, but he was a rich man, he made a lot of money, and his loyalties was with Pharaoh, and how he created mischief and what was his ultimate fortune in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with these strong messages, Surah Al-Qasas finishes off, and we move on to Surah Al-Ankabut. This is another amazing surah which was revealed in Meccan period. And in this surah, the surah begins with Alif Lam Mim, Hasiban Nasu an yutraku an yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun. Alif Lam Mim. Do the people think that they will be left alone on saying we believe, and that they will not be tested? Obviously, the moment we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, I'm a believer, I'm a Muslim, then a lot of tests are going to be in my life, so that we have to score a good number to attain that status in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and yes, earn ourselves the best spot. Then in verse number 8, we have been given a little warning. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا. We have enjoined a man to show kindness to his parents. But the warning starts that if the parents, while you are trying to be at your best behavior with them, have beautiful manners with your parents, but if they invite you to do something which is against the principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, it is shirk, it is not praying, or it is not following the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's where you will not listen to them. Like previously, we had always been talking about doing everything, utmost things for your parents. So over here, the principle is no obedience to creation in disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could be your parents, it could be husband, spouse, it could be your children, it could be community, it could be your boss. When you know that this is a clear, demarcated area of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when you are going to follow that in principle. And then towards the end of Juz 20, we come to a very beautiful story, which is Masalul lazina takhazu min dunillahi awliya ka masalil ankabut. The parable of those who take protection other than Allah is that of a spider who builds for itself a dwelling, and surely the weakest of all the dwellings is the dwelling of the spider, if they but knew it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a very beautiful parable. What is that? If you take any other people, any other deities besides Allah as a helper, then they are like that spider which is spinning a web for itself. And if you look at how the spider spins that web, that it brings forth a very delicate thread, and in a very sturdy manner places it somewhere, and then it brings it another thread and tries to place it, and so it is like interweaving those threads, and ultimately when the web is ready, the spider leaves a sticky fluid on it as a trap. But overall, no matter how much the spider puts in, it's a very flimsy kind of a weak foundation. It's not clearly visible, and it's not very strong. You can't rely on it, and it's also flat in 2 dimensions. So the basic message over here is that if we, like home, because the example given is the home of the spider. Now for us, the home is a place of protection, home is a place of safety, refuge, home is a place of warmth, warmth and ease. But over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that this is not so. In reality, it's a deadly trap. The spider, whatever it weaves, it is not a protection. It is basically a trap that has been set up. So all the protections that people seek rather than coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are like that trap. And that is why it has been said, وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ. And these are the parables that we cite for mankind, but none will grasp them except the people who are wise. And then خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بِالْحَقِّ. Allah has created the heavens and the earth to manifest the truth. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Surely in this there is sign for the believers. So very, very important message towards the end of the surah, and this message is about a warning. Do not rely on anything which is going to sound to you like the spider's house, which is going to be a very weak house. So there is a hadith towards the end in which we find out that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever loves this worldly life will suffer in his hereafter, and whoever loves his hereafter will suffer in this worldly life. So prefer that which endures over that which is fleeting. So remember this dua, Rabbi inni liman zalta ilayya min khairin fakir. And yes, time for a lot of istighfar and listening to and understanding the basic plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more you understand the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more it becomes easy for you to put things into practice. And also you have to learn to think beyond yourself, as we learn from the story of Musa alayhi salam, where he was in need when he went to Madian, but he reached out to the ladies and he reached out to the people for help. And temporary nature of this life has to be taken into account. So all these foundation principles, the more we try to understand, the more we try to practice, that's when we not only understand the beauty of Quran, but also we learn the ways to improve different practices in our life. So we'll finish off with the dua. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.